everyone. Welcome back to Great Covers. And, well, I just listened to Joni Mitchell's Woodstock, the original, and now I am going to listen to a cover of that song by something entitled CSNY. Is that supposed to be? I guess I'll find out probably because I have some things to read here in a moment. Of course, this selection was chosen by my patrons on Patreon with a poll, and I'm enjoying the exploration process, and I thank them all for choosing this for me. So what do I have to learn about this CSNY? Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Okay, that makes sense. CSNY. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. I wonder why didn't they play around with it a bit and turn it into some word or something. I've known some groups to do that, I guess. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, CSN, was a folk rock supergroup made up in 1968 of the American singer-songwriters David Crosby and Stephen Stills and the English singer-songwriter Graham Nash. When joined by the Canadian singer-songwriter Neil Young as a fourth member, they were called Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, CSNY. That explains it. That's why they tacked Y on the end instead of putting it somewhere in the middle for a vowel or something. They are noted for their intricate vocal harmonies and lasting influence on American music and culture, as well as their political activism and often tumultuous interpersonal relationships. And I'm just thinking, Crosby, David Crosby, not Bing Crosby, so I can't say that I've listened to him. Stephen Stills, Graham Nash, I don't think I've listened to any of those, but Neil Young, I guess I did listen to Cortez the Killer, didn't I? So I have heard something by one of the members of CSNY. David Van Cortlandt Crosby was an American singer, songwriter, and guitarist. He first found fame as a member of the Byrds, with whom he helped pioneer the genres of folk rock and psychedelia in the mid-1960s. In addition to his music, Crosby was known for his outspoken personality, politics, and personal troubles. He was sometimes depicted as emblematic of the counterculture of the 1960s. Stephen Arthur Stills is an American musician, singer, and songwriter best known for his work with Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Manassas. As both a solo act and member of 3 successful bands, Stills has combined record sales of over 35 million albums. That's a lot. He was ranked number 28 in Rolling Stone's 2003 list of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time, and number 47 in the 2011 list. Stills became the first person to be inducted twice on the same night into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I didn't even know it was possible to do that. Graham William Nash, OBE, the OBE after his name is for the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, is an English-American musician, singer, and songwriter. He is known for his light tenor voice and for his contributions as a member of the Hollies and Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Neil Percival Young, which is the one I've listened to, Cortez the Killer, in this one is playing the lead guitar. CSNY are called a supergroup since all of their members had established a name for themselves before they formed the group. And I guess as I'm reading through the little bios of each member, each one is more than just established. Each one is pretty significant. And I suppose I'll be visiting them in other formats, other manifestations of their work along the way. Joni was friends with everyone in CSNY. She knew Neil Young in Canada before they came to the US. David Crosby was the producer on her first album and was key to getting her signed to a record contract, and Graham Nash was her boyfriend at the time. Wow, so there's some close relationships here. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young had learned the song from Mitchell herself, but the band's version introduced major changes in tone. Jimi Hendrix was involved early in the song's development, and a recording taped on the 30th of September 1969, half a year before the album came out, with Hendrix playing bass and overdubbing guitar, was released in 2018 on the album Both Sides of the Sky. Well, it seems like this piece of music really attracted a lot of the big names. Of course, it seems like Joni Mitchell was the central figure in all the attraction, but they must have all really enjoyed the piece to want to do a cover of it, do their own version of it. Woodstock was one of the few déjà vu tracks where Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young all performed their parts in the same session. The Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young version of Woodstock peaked at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 1970 and number 3 in Canada. Well, that is quite impressive. So now I need to find out, what does this cover really sound like? Let's try it. But it's certainly no longer just piano.
Well, I came upon the child of God. He was walking along the road, and
Very different.
asked him, tell me, where are you going? Yes, he told me. Said, I'm going down to Yesterday's Farm, gonna join in a rock and rollin'. Got to get back to the land, set my soul free. We are stars.
But there is some piano in there.
We are building gardens, and we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. Well, then can I wrong beside you? I have come to lose the smile, and I feel myself becoming something turning.
So, I would say, well, this whole concept of great covers and listening to the different ways that different artists and groups handle a piece of music it's so much fun and it's so interesting. The term cover is something that, as I said at the beginning of this series, I'm not sure why it's chosen as the term, but I'm realizing along the way that when you say cover a song, basically all you're saying is that somebody else other than the original group did a version of it. It doesn't tell us whether they simply redid what the original group did in their own voice, but not really changing much, or if they really did a completely new reworking arrangement of it. And so it's always a bit of a mystery I'm discovering every time I go listen to a cover. Is it going to be like with Love of My Life and Scorpion's version of it? That was basically just singing the same thing. It had a slightly different feel because of course it was a different artist doing it, but still it didn't really change the it wasn't intending to change the format or the presentation of the piece that much. You play a piano because that's what you have at hand, not because you're giving it a completely different arrangement. But here, this is certainly more than just repeating what Joni Mitchell did. This is a complete reworking of it. Stylistically, mood-wise, instrumentally, vocally, it has a completely different feel. And so I wouldn't call this merely, well, let's go back to my classical background. Because we have two things in the classical music world, which are distinct from each other. Sometimes they blend, but they're two distinct things. One is what we call an interpretation. And That's basically anytime somebody performs a piece of music that they haven't written. And I would say that probably at least 95% of classical music performance, maybe even more than that, is simply that. The composers, the creators of the original creators are long dead, most of them. And so the only thing to do is to play their music, and sometimes we try to do it as close as possible to the way they might have imagined it in their own minds. All kinds of scholarly research around that, because some of these date back hundreds of years. Other times, we have what's called an arrangement, in which we take a piece of music and we arrange it in our own style. We're not trying to resurrect something from the past, or to simply link our spirit to the spirit of the music in the performance without really changing anything. It's more about taking it and making it my own. Kind of like if I were to take Queen's Love of My Life and do a version on the harp, I could do all kinds of different things stylistically, and of course I wouldn't be singing. I would just be doing the solo, the melody with one hand. I could put it in the bass. I could, all of that. That's what I think of as an arrangement. And so as I listen to this cover, this is clearly one of those covers that is, from my perspective, an arrangement, a complete reworking of the original, so that if you put them side by side, without titles, just listening to the musical style, you could really call them two separate pieces of music, couldn't you? In fact, probably, and I don't know which ones because I haven't listened to them yet, but probably some other of Joni Mitchell's pieces of music, which are completely unrelated to this song, would sound more similar to her original than this Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young version, which is kind of an interesting thing to play around with. So that's what's going through my mind as I'm listening to this, and this is more upbeat, rhythmic. There's a bit more of a energy to it. The other one, if you remember, if you listened to it, and if you haven't, you can find the link here. I was talking about how it's so ethereal and angelic and silvery and light and hopeful and airy, and all the idealistic dreams from that era seem to have been distilled into the piece of music. Here, it sounds more like we're listening to a story. We're listening to a story that's being told. A different style, but not, well, a different piece of music, but kind of in the same storytelling style as, anything from The Boxer to Neil Young's Cortez the Killer to, there was another one I did recently. I guess it was a Jimi Hendrix story of someone going down to Mexico to escape the authorities. What was the name of that one?
Hey Joe.
Hey Joe. Hey Joe. Yes. And this has the same kind of quality to it. We're listening to a story. Well, I was going down the road and I met somebody walking and I stopped to ask him, and now he's telling me the story, and that's the vibe I pick up from it. I've talked about this in other music from time to time, and it catches my ear again. The way that the drums and the guitar are linked together rhythmically. And in this guitar, I hear a particular technique which I don't know the proper term for it on guitar, but it sounds to me like he's plucking and stopping immediately, or maybe even hitting and stopping immediately. There's this very abrupt stop, and we do the same sort of thing on the harp. It takes 2 hands to do it on the harp. Well, I could do it, but it's not so sharp this way. So we actually do 2 different ways. You can even play around with it that way. Sometimes it shows up in harp music, and I'm hearing it here on the guitar. And he's using it as a sort of rhythmic enhancement. And it's enhancing what's happening in the drums and kind of lifting the drums out of the background in a way and bringing them to our awareness, because now it's like one is lifting up the other. You hear that?
We are starving, we are golden, we are broken-hearted, and we got to get ourselves back to the garden.
The guitar is kind of... That's a nice way of bringing in the guitar solo there, and I'll back up so I don't stop it in the middle, because I know that's hard on everyone. But that moment, back to the garden, and that's the moment when the guitar comes in. It's a nice place to kind of string out the growth, as if you hear plants starting to grow, vines starting to expand everywhere, and the guitar becomes this abundant growth springing out of the garden. It's kind of fun. Everything is getting ready to leaf out and growing and expanding, and you have vines trailing everywhere.
We are starving, we are golden, we are broken-hearted, and we got to get ourselves back to the garden.
Bit of bliss on the piano there, wasn't there?
By the time we got to...
One of the things that I notice about the way they are handling the melody, as opposed to Joni Mitchell, remember I commented Joni Mitchell's was so flowing and fluid and natural, and even the accompaniment pattern she was doing on the piano was something similar to this. In the left hand, and something similar in the right hand. And here, this complete reworking of the piece. They haven't just reworked the accompaniment, the instrumentation and all of that. They've also reworked the style of the melody. And they are using the words differently than Joni Mitchell did. She was singing in a very legato, smooth line. Now here, they are using it more, I'm going to say rhythmically again. Because you hear how they stop on some of the consonants, just like the guitar stops on some of the strings. And so even the lyrics, even the voices are contributing to this more rhythmic energy, as opposed to a more horizontal traveling legato line of melody.
By the time we got to Woodstock, we were heavily strong, and everywhere was a start and a celebration. And I dreamed I saw the bomb and death flames riding shotgun in the sky.
And that the bomber planes riding shotgun in the sky.
We are starving, we are broken, we are caught in the devil's ball.
And it's kind of nice the way the chorus is over the top and the melody is underneath, and then it switches, so now the chorus is singing melodically. Guitar coming in here again. I guess that's Neil Young on the guitar, isn't it? Very nice. Very nicely arranged, reworked, recreated, essentially. And it works out very well. So this piece of music actually strikes me as being kind of, well, when would I choose to listen to it? It's one of those that I would put on a driving playlist. It makes me think of driving down the road and just enjoying the rhythm, and it's a happy day. Maybe the windows are rolled down and well, it is springtime here in Tennessee right now, so maybe that's fresh in my mind. But it really makes me think of a vibrant spring morning, and you just want something upbeat and happy to listen to while you're driving.
Woodstock.
To Woodstock, there you go. On the other hand, Joni Mitchell's is more reflective and relaxing. I might listen to that in my home, maybe if I want to sit down and enjoy a relaxed evening with some tea, some snacks, or just take it easy in the evening. That's more how I perceive a context in which I would choose to listen to her version. And it's also interesting, well, I understand that Joni Mitchell was primarily a folk singer. At least that's what I know. And I don't know how much of a rock singer she was perceived to have been, or she is considered to have been. I guess I will find out more as I listen to more of her music. And it's true that her piece of her original Woodstock performance didn't strike me as particularly rocky, more folk or just simple song style. Whereas this CSNY fits perfectly in the middle of the road of what I envision as being rock music. And so it's very appropriate to have this rock version on my channel and see how well, I've listened to a couple other, there was House of the Rising Sun, which was a folk piece of music which was formatted into a rock piece, and I've probably heard a few others along the way, and I'm sure I will hear more, but this is a great example of how a piece of music can be reworked to really suit the rock genre, stylistic elements and qualities and feel. So, well, that was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. Thank you again to my patrons who chose it for me. And if any of you want to get in on the selection process for these great covers, you're welcome to check out my Patreon page and see what's there and maybe participate. I enjoyed this, and I'll see you all soon.